Hello and a very warm welcome to our first Slack Frontiers Europe 2021. We recognise many of you are juggling work and home responsibilities at this moment, and we're so thankful to have you with us today. We've put together an exciting, informative and inspiring show. We have a fantastic variety of European customers that you'll hear from, product teasers, plus a closing keynote speaker you won't want to miss. I'm speaking with you today from my living room in London, and this year we celebrated 4 years since the opening of our London office. We now have customers spanning across mainland and Eastern Europe, the Middle East and Russia. This range of customers showcases how the European market for Slack is diverse and growing. Now, you may be here for different reasons. Some of you are in the early stages of your Slack journey, while some of you are mature Slack customers that are looking for new ways to pivot to this way of working. We wanted to bring you a discussion around the future of work. So to start, an interview between our CEO and Greg Williams, the Editor-in-Chief of Wired UK. Next, insights from our Chief People Officer, Nadia Rawlinson, on the future of work as it relates to people. And then a discussion from Slack's VP for EMEA, Johan Buting, talking about how we've seen really customers embrace this future of work using our platform. You'll also be hearing from some of our younger fans today. I can't wait to hear what they have to say about the future. So as we speak about the future of work, we really believe this is a moment of possibility. We think there's a better way to work where we feel more connected, collaborative and flexible. We've kept our cultures alive without even being in an office. I personally have loved our Slack Dad Jokes channel and the cooking channel, which have provided me with much needed daily doses of humour and helped me improve my baking skills at the same time, doing 3 UK lockdowns. Slack can be a powerful way to embrace this type of future, one that centralises communication for your organisation and provides freedom to your people. I'm also proud to tell you today about our Slack for Good sponsorship. We're making a generous donation to UNICEF India to help battle the second deadly wave of the pandemic. So, let's get started. You'll now hear from Stewart and Greg as they discuss the future of work. But just before we do, check out part 1 of their conversation. Let's see what some of tomorrow's Slack employees have to say.
The town will be robots,
holographic computers, flying cars.
Better technology.
Good. I think it will look good.
I don't know. If you're at work and if you're home doing work, it's another way for doing homework.
Stewart, great to have you with us here today and really excited to have an opportunity to have a conversation on what the future of work looks like. So let's get into it. So first question, clearly the past year has been incredibly challenging both for individuals and organisations. And I'm really interested to get your thoughts. What do you think we've learned from this great remote work experiment that we've all been going through?
Well, the first and most important thing I think we learned is that it's possible. And I would definitely put myself in the category of people who in February 2020 would have thought like we couldn't all just start working from home and maintain anything like the same level of productivity. And part of that is, just imagining some team working on some project, but it's obviously way more than that. At the time that we decided to shut down our offices, there were something like 500 or 600 on-site interviews scheduled. Maybe some of those were weeks or even a couple months away. But the whole recruiting team had to change how they were working, and the whole recruiting process had to change. And the same thing is true for new hire onboarding. We used to fly everyone to San Francisco for the first week. And obviously a lot of that was built around in-person meetings and contact. So it's more than just, a group of marketers launching a website and coordinating their work. It's kind of like every aspect. And obviously, huge amount of business travel, salespeople going to meet customers. I was on the road a lot, and all of that kind of ground to a halt too. So the lesson to take away is, I think, if we thought that was impossible, and then when we were forced to do it, it turned out to be possible, what else is possible that we didn't think would be?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think it has changed. One CEO said to me that they thought that the pandemic has reset the art of what's possible. I think that's a really great way to frame it. And in this hybrid model that you're describing, it clearly offers enormous advantages in many ways, both for employers and employees, but there's going to be challenges, and obviously a lot of employers are going to be worried about productivity. And given that some people will be in the office at different times from others, and some people are going to work remotely full-time and others will want to be back into the office, how do you think about how businesses and organizations can best balance this flexibility that I think most organizations are going to move towards with, but they're also going to need to couple that with the productivity that's needed?
One way to think about this, instead of a slider for the number of days, is the degree to which the organization is digital first. And this is very convenient for us as a company that sells software to help people work together, and probably convenient also, or maybe even self-serving for both us and the people in the audience for this conversation who are kind of leading the charge inside their companies. But it is really true. And when I say digital first, I have a really specific meaning in mind. This phrase could have been around for a very long time, but the first person I ever heard use it was Toby Lütke, the CEO of Shopify. And this was back in April or May of last year when we were talking about what we will eventually return to. He was the first person I heard say, if there's 7 people in a meeting and one of them is remote, we're still all going to get on the Zoom call separately, and everyone's going to have their own tile in the meeting, which sounds like it's going to be a little bit inconvenient, and it might be to some extent. It also sounds, as someone who was on the road a lot and calling into meetings, like a godsend, because it's so frustrating to be the only person who has 2 seconds of lag in the conversation, and can't hear everyone around the room because the microphones aren't well placed and all of that. But if you think about it that way, like taking the digital first approach, then every bit of in-person interaction is like a bonus. It's like some additional tool, but it does require more discipline, and inconvenience might be the wrong word, but effort. It does take more effort. At the same time, you talk to anyone, certainly any manager, any leader, and if you ask them, okay, look, of all the meetings that you're having across the company right now, with the right kind of training, the right kind of techniques, the right kind of like structure and process, for example, people like moving to the Amazon style 6-page memo pre-read instead of slide presentations, or there's always someone responsible for ensuring that the meeting has a clear agenda and decisions to be made, or all these different processes. If you ask people, could your company improve the overall efficacy and productivity of its meetings by 20%, let's say? Almost everyone would say yes. And then, well, if most people are spending most of their day in meetings, why aren't you doing that? Because it's hard. It's, if there really was a 20% improvement to be made there, and you have 10,000 employees and therefore have like $1 billion plus in payroll costs, and people are spending, let's say, half of their time on really basic acts of communication and coordination. So not like the interesting, creative, strategic brainstorm kind of conversation, but more like the update, the status report, the review, all of that stuff. It's not that those things are unimportant. I think they're actually critically important, because that's how you stay aligned and you're able to accomplish things with a large group of people, and especially really complex projects that take a long time and involve like hundreds or even thousands of people. But it is a tremendous amount of effort, and so why don't we do that? Why don't we put that effort in? And when you start to move digital first, I think it's an opportunity to re-examine the ways that you're working, see which ones serve you and which ones don't, and kind of what things you'd like to change in the future. Because that requirement of more discipline, the 6 people who are in the office all getting on the Zoom separately, the more careful use of documentation to support asynchronous style meetings, or to support people in multiple time zones. All of that effort, I think, has a huge payoff, and maybe we can piggyback our way in this world where we have to change all these things to create some of those changes which we hoped that we would have made all along.
We'll come back later for part 2 of the conversation. Next, we're going to hear from our Chief People Officer, Nadia Rawlinson, on the people and culture side of things. But first, another word or two from our little sponsors.
Walk and cook. Work so then we can have money.
I don't know what you do, so no.
He works for marketing operation. He almost never gets a break. You tell people if their art is good or bad.
Animation and cool stuff.
Work?
She makes money.
You never really explained it to me.
Emails?
Eat snacks, have lunch, go party, yeah.
Hello everyone and welcome. I'm coming to you from my home in Chicago, Illinois in the US, and I'm excited to share with you today what we've learned at Slack in navigating work during these unprecedented times. We're embracing the future of work because we've seen how it can improve connections between people, how we can be more productive, and evolve our culture in important ways. I'll also share some tips for leaders on how to navigate this new normal. You know, I can speak from personal experience because I joined Slack in the middle of the pandemic back in September. I've never even met my peers or exec team in person, including Stewart Butterfield, our CEO. Prior to the pandemic, we were surprised to learn that only 3% of Slack was remote. So this was a big change for us, but it was an opportunity for us to lead in the space. As professionals around the world, we experienced the collapse of the personal and our working lives into one. Social systems were tested, healthcare systems were stressed to the max, we had to figure out how to homeschool our children, and we also had to take care of loved ones. But during this time, we gained a new level of flexibility. Inclusion became a centerpiece of how we work together, and connection became that much more important. We discovered, yeah, this feels different, but it's possible. We can be productive, we can launch new products, hire and onboard people. You know, at Slack, 30% of our entire workforce to date has been hired during the pandemic. So we can be effective, and we also can find balance in our lives. Many of these insights led us to establish the Future Forum, a think tank Slack sponsors to create original research on the topics of the future of work. For instance, in the US, underrepresented groups, which are made up of Blacks, Hispanics, and Asians, find a higher sense of belonging than their peers, which was an unexpected result of the pandemic. We wondered, why could that be? It turns out, people can just bring their whole selves to work. There's less code switching. And by that, I mean the way that we change the way we speak, dress, and act in order to make other people feel comfortable and to fit into a group. And quite frankly, it can be exhausting. Underrepresented minorities really do feel a sense of belonging in this distributed work environment. 64% of us feel a greater boost in the ability to even manage stress, and a 25% greater improvement in work-life balance. We now have the opportunity to take what we've learned during this time and leverage technology to be the great democratizer. Employees want flexibility because they have lives. One of the other things that we learned at the Future Forum is that 83% of professionals don't even want to go back to the office full time. They prefer flexible hybrid working environments. Now here is the opportunity for leaders. First, we need to set expectations for hybrid work. Shift to a digital-first approach, not in an office or in-person approach. Next, we need to get creative about new ways to measure progress. Hours in the office and FaceTime just won't cut it anymore. We need to redefine and evolve our cultures by listening to our people and adapting to what they need. No one nails it on the first try, but it's important to try at all. Slack as a platform can help improve the connection between people and your culture. I found at Slack that we have a very unique culture that's intentional, people-centric, and highly collaborative. And for me, it's shown up in a couple of different ways. For instance, we have what we call Fridays, a once-a-month Friday off holiday in order for our people to prevent burnout. This allows for people to spend time on things other than work, connecting with friends and family, or just doing what they love. And what's more important about this Friday is that all of us as leaders also take the Fridays. It's important to model this behavior from the top. And on Mondays, I come back and hop into some of our communities and connections and talk about those activities that I did on Friday to make sure we're reinforcing those norms. We also have culture channels that create communities around a certain topic or interest, such as doodles or cooking. And I've really gotten into those over the pandemic. Doodles are for people who have dogs that are mixed with poodles. I have Miles. He's my favorite. Don't tell Herbie that. And we post pictures of them throughout the week around some of the things that dogs do. There's also in the cooking channel, I'm learning to become a master chef at making pasta from scratch. And so I have a community of people to help me along on my journey. And it's really great to be able to have those moments when we can step away, but within Slack, and learn from other people that are outside of my day-to-day team about things that are of personal interest to me. All of these connections, though, are supported by some of the features that our platform offers. These are capabilities that enable us to exist in some of those cultural connection channels. For instance, we take Fridays. You can update your status by saying Nadia Rawlinson, my name, and a status update saying Friday with a great emoticon, so people know that I'm taking advantage of the holiday. We also have automated time zones, and so people understand your working hours and when it's best to connect with you. But finally, if you're on the other end of the spectrum and you just want to put your head down and get stuff done, there's the option to pause all notifications altogether, so you really can focus on getting work done. I promised when we first met that I'll give a few tips for leaders as you navigate this next year. First, be curious. Be a student of your own culture. Learn how it works and how it's evolving. When I first came to Slack, I was really surprised at how open and candid our conversations were. I started poking around our culture channels and saw one of our behavioral tenets is to embrace the elephant. And by that I mean go after and say the hard thing. It's allowed us to have very direct and clear communication, which has really made us better. Second, be intentional. Don't assume things will evolve as they should. Make the implicit explicit and always over-communicate. And lastly, be authentic. Admit that all of this is hard. Ask the hard questions of yourself and others, but also engage on personal topics. People want to see that you're human too. So here's what I want all of us to remember. This is our first global pandemic. It's impacting our lives in personal and professional ways. As leaders, give yourselves permission to try things, explore something new as we move forward. One thing's for sure, the vision is clear. This is our opportunity to redefine the future of work and make a difference in organizations for decades to come.
Thank you, Nadia, for reminding us that this new work environment can give us the opportunity to bring our whole selves to work. I love that. And as you pointed out, Slack has a pretty amazing culture. The platform is both our culture and our business, and I have definitely felt that this past year. So next up is Johan Buting, Slack's VP for EMEA, to talk to us about how we see customers using Slack to embrace the future of work and run their businesses.
Thank you, Nini. Welcome everybody to our Frontiers conference. We are so excited to have you all with us. I'm seeing participants from London, from Moscow, from Dubai, from Oslo, even from Cape Town. So again, we are thrilled to have you here. As you can see, I am speaking from my home office today. And that is really highlighting a question that is on everybody's mind right now. How will we work when the lockdown is over? What have we learned over the last 1.5 years, and how can we best apply that to how we work in future? To help us think about that question, I'm here to talk about a few specific things with you today. First, how do we at Slack see our customers and our users think about the future of work? Second, then, how do we see them act? i.e., how do we see our customers use Slack in the current environment? And finally, some steps that we think everybody can take today in their own business to best embrace the future of work. So let's start by talking about a few trends that we see how work is changing. According to polls conducted by our own research institution, which we call Future Forum, 83% of knowledge workers do not want to go back to 5 days a week in a physical office. The preference is strongest in millennials, who are by now constituting half of the world's global workforce. They really want a hybrid or even a fully remote model. And from that it's clear, the future of work is hybrid. During this past tumultuous year, Slack served our customers by helping them stay aligned, productive, and connected. And observing our customers over that period provided us with some very valuable insights. Many of them started using Slack for the first time. We saw a significant jump in paid customers, growing by 94% in the UK, 100% in Germany, and even 138% in France, albeit from a slightly lower base. And Slack's own shift to remote work within a mere 72 hours was also relatively seamless. We do think this was because we relied on our own platform rather than email. So let's talk about email a little bit. I think it is becoming ever more clear that Slack and tools like it have a massive leg up over email when it comes to productivity. According to a research study by Wakefield Research, Slack users worldwide estimate they save an average of 90 minutes a day using Slack instead of email. That's 7.5 hours, almost a whole working day. And it's not just about saving time. 96% of users believe they can forge better connections via Slack than via email. And nearly half of IT decision makers predict that another form of digital communication will completely replace email within the next 3 years. This includes an impressive 60% of IT decision makers in France, and in the UK, 40% of users would rather go without email than without Slack. Of course, we did not only hear feedback about email, we also heard a lot about meetings. I won't go into that in the same amount of detail here, but there is one statistic I would like to share. Slack users estimate that on average 40% of phone or video meetings could have been replaced with an asynchronous Slack thread. So they also see some massive efficiency gains in that area. Let's talk a little bit about how we have seen Slack help companies stay effective throughout the pandemic. Let me start with acknowledging that it was not easy for any of us to find our way through the past year. And I personally must admit that I was very skeptical when it came to work from home. Especially, I could simply not imagine that it would be possible to run our business here in Europe without a significant amount of in-person customer meetings. I was very nervous when the entire team had to go remote. No change of this scale and speed comes without its challenges. But ultimately, I have to admit, things have worked way better over this past year than I thought. And based on that experience, I see so much opportunity to change the way we work. As the world begins to open back up, we can become so much more productive, more connected, more flexible, more inclusive. And I'm convinced that taking advantage of these opportunities will be a key driver of success going forward. The companies who embrace these opportunities in a smart and fast way, they will be the most successful ones. With that being said, let's take a look at how Slack can help transform the way we work. Slack really consists of two parts. First, it is a messaging platform for businesses, which lets you organize conversations into channels. And in addition, it is also an integration layer that allows you to integrate all the software that you work with into Slack. It is really the combination of those two parts, the messaging system and the integration layer, both organized into channels, that makes Slack so powerful and popular among employees. People can work together more effectively, connect all their software tools and services, and find the information they need to do their best work, all within a secure, highly scalable environment that fits you regardless of whether you have 5 employees or 500,000. It has never been more important than now to bring everyone together in one place. And that is why we like to think of Slack as your digital headquarters. And if there's one term I want you to take away from this session, then it's that one, digital headquarters. Now let me tell you about 3 big benefits that our customers regularly talk about. First, Slack's unique platform centralizes information. Once all communication gets moved into channels, everyone knows where to go to ask questions, give updates, and get caught up. It brings the right people, information, and through the integration layer, the right tools into one place, moving work forward with a common purpose. This has a transformative effect on your daily information load. Second, Slack fosters asynchronous communication. Communication does not always need to happen in real time. Slack allows people to work and communicate when it's best for them, giving users the ability to focus on meaningful work and keep their calendars clear. And third, Slack fosters more collaboration. Collaborative work is no longer defined by one way or one time of doing things. You may not need scheduled meetings to move your work forward, and perhaps it's not even the best way. And there's more than one way to get across what you want to say, through messages, videos, audio, etc. With Slack, collaboration is always happening, whenever, wherever, however it is best for you. In fact, our customers have told us repeatedly how they have seen these benefits impact their business over the past year.
So the pandemic's really highlighted how biased businesses tend to be against people who have commitments outside of work. It's really forced us to reconsider what types of interactions need to happen in real time versus not, right? So we now record all critical meetings so people can watch them at a time that's convenient for them. We still run live Q&As, but we also have subject-specific and more general Ask Anything Slack channels that people can subscribe to and engage with us and each other at a time that's more convenient to them, which is wonderful, right? So we've learned a lot about ways to support our colleagues from a well-being perspective as well over the past year. Whether it be through running sort of online exercise classes that we can do together, or cuter little things to do with sort of chatbots. So when we recognize people, or when we notice people using certain keywords in conversations, keywords that may suggest that they're feeling stressed or under pressure, the chatbot will automatically direct them to some of our well-being resources, which is I just think a really nice touch. My thoughts on the future of office-based working. I really struggle to imagine a future where companies can really justify insisting that all employees return to the office 5 days a week. So this particularly applies to global companies like ours with distributing teams, where we've shown just how more effective certain types of working can be when conducted remotely or virtually. And I see platforms like Slack really playing a huge role in enabling this sort of mindset shift and behavior change over the coming years. So Slack plays a very important role when it comes to successfully merging businesses, which is something that we at Jet know rather a lot about, given how active we are with M&A. So when we bring a new team into our organization, consolidating our Slack workspace is an absolute top priority. So Slack Connect helps us to bridge the gap between our organizations, but nothing says one team like being on the same workspace. So we put a lot of energy towards ensuring that our Slack setup mirrors the organizational structure, and the flexibility that Slack offers means that we can be quite deliberate with the way that we design the structure of our channels, so as to encourage certain types of conversations or collaboration between certain individuals. So I mean, I think I'd probably go so far as to say that Slack is actually a critical success factor when it comes to bringing new companies together.
Now, let us take a look at a few new tools that we have added to our platform recently to enable you to harness these trends. And let's start off with Slack Connect, which really changed my working life. I already mentioned my job used to revolve around a lot of travel to meet customers face to face. But I've actually been able to connect with even more senior leaders and CIOs over the last 12 months than before the pandemic. That is due to Slack Connect. So what is Slack Connect? Slack Connect allows you to work with external organizations with the same speed and security you've come to expect from Slack within your company, extending the benefits of channels to any organization you need to work with. Slack Connect continues to transform the way organizations work together. Moreover, and to provide an even faster, more lightweight way to kick off conversations than email, we have recently launched Slack Connect Direct Message, a way to securely exchange direct messages with anyone at any organization that you work with. Simply share your private invite link with a trusted partner, a customer, a vendor. Invite them to message with you on Slack and thereby speed up the work that often starts over back and forth emails. I can tell you it has recently changed how I work with our customers. For example, we recently had a customer in the Netherlands where the head of global customer success was a huge Slack fan, but also somewhat frustrated because she felt that we were not hearing her product feedback. While we did regular quarterly meetings with her, she was not sure she was getting through. Leveraging Slack Connect, I was able to start messaging with her, connecting our two Slack instances. Whenever she has an idea, she is now messaging me directly. And I can then draw our product team into the discussion or our local team in the Netherlands. She can draw additional team members on her side into the discussion, etc. The outcome has been a much closer customer relationship. And indeed, some very valuable ideas how we can make Slack even better for customer service. There are two more things I'd like to talk about, and both of them are additional collaboration tools that we are building within Slack. For that, let us come back to the theme of asynchronous work. The trends that we discussed earlier all point to a future that strikes the right balance between synchronous and asynchronous work. In future, we will be more deliberate in deciding what work needs to be done at the same time, synchronous, and what work can be done at different times, asynchronous. In order to empower workers to decide for themselves what mode of work a certain task requires, we are working on asynchronous video. We want to replace the countless hours of often unnecessary and inefficient synchronous meetings. So we are coming up with new ways to use video to communicate. We are working on a feature that allows you to record a video snippet, then post it in channel for your team to view at a time that suits them, making it more inclusive for those in different time zones and those with different communication styles. At the same time, we are also implementing new ways to facilitate synchronous collaboration by making it more casual, similar to what you'd expect in an office environment. Because channels are where work is already happening, there's a huge opportunity to make them the place where more casual collaboration is happening too. One example of that is lightweight audio. We have been prototyping a lightweight audio feature, which is being released soon, which enables always available audio-only interaction that fosters the kind of spontaneous collaboration we are missing from not being in the office together. You simply press a button and thereby open an audio connection where everybody in that channel can join and talk to each other if they want so. And if they don't want to, they don't have to. Essentially, it's an audio wormhole. Another addition to Slack that has long been requested by many customers is our Workflow Builder. How does that work? Workflow Builder is a visual tool that lets anyone automate routine tasks right in Slack, connecting all your favorite apps, remember that integration layer, all the apps you have integrated, and putting them together with no coding required. Yes, that means you don't need to be a developer to use this. You can do things like get new team members up to speed with welcome messages. For example, you set up a workflow so that whenever people join a channel, they are automatically sent resources they need to get caught up without wasting time asking others for information. Or you can create a daily stand-up routine in channel instead of requiring attendance to a scheduled meeting. Every day at a given time, you can set a message to be posted in a team channel with a reminder and instructions for posting a daily status update. That is a useful way to keep teams aligned and communicate status and blockers. Or finally, you can keep up to date, respond to, and even create incidents in real time. For example, if you have an application like PagerDuty installed, you can not only get real-time updates around incidents, you can also create an incident from within Slack. As you can see, a lot of Slack's core product roadmap is focused on encouraging a more flexible, inclusive, and connected way of working. Slack is making digital-first solutions work for everyone in every situation. We are talking about challenging, rigid barriers that no longer apply to a modern-day work with tools and capabilities in Slack that allow people to create and consume and act upon critical information. Finally, let us take a look at some very simple and practical steps that each of you can take to embrace the future of work. All over the world, leaders are facing this new future of work. It varies a little bit depending on what country you are in, some other circumstances, but it's clear that all of us are looking ahead to a working world that is predominantly hybrid. With this in mind, I'd like to share some basic tips for leaders making the transition to hybrid work on Slack. First, set clear expectations about how to use Slack for each function in your business. Second, make use of the training resources that are available online and through our customer success teams. And third, connect Slack to all your other critical tools. Again, we have 2,400 applications in our app directory, including Google Calendar, Microsoft OneDrive, and Zoom, and many, many others. Slack is the 2% of your software budget that makes the other 98% more effective. Don't lose out on that benefit. Integrate those applications. With that, let me wrap up for today. At Slack, we consider ourselves very lucky to work with companies of all sizes across all industries, especially now as we collectively begin to plot a new future, leaving the old normal behind for a better way of working. We are especially thankful for all our EMEA customers who have been such strong supporters of Slack. Again, thank you for your commitment. We hope to have the opportunity to speak with you and others who want to learn more about the topics we will be covering at Slack Frontiers. The future starts today.
When we started the business, which was just over 5 years ago, we knew that we wanted to have a company where culture came first, a company that was going to be operating with kind of high bandwidth communication between team members. And I think, we got tired of the old-fashioned solutions like email that were just not discursive enough and were far too kind of almost kind of pre-digital in their conception. So for us, Slack was an absolutely natural thing we wanted to build at the core of our business. For our senior leadership team and for me as CEO, I think what Slack does is 2 or 3 things. The first thing it does is it actually lets us see what's happening in the company. That's always been important. But I think as we've globalized and through the pandemic, as we've had kind of almost total remote working, Slack has provided us with this kind of continuous qualitative pulse check on how people are feeling and what they're doing. It also lets us kind of drive our thought leadership through the business. And a lot of the senior management team use Slack to make sure that not only their direct teams, but actually, different slices through the company are thinking about challenges, tech challenges, customer opportunities, new products and services, really in the same way. And they're able to get instant kind of feedback and coalesce the team behind those. This year, Slack's really sort of facilitated our growth because, we've had this challenge of how do you onboard 700 new team members, double the size of your company, at a period when the vast majority of them can't even come in the office for an interview, for onboarding and for training. And really what Slack has done is enabled new starts to almost immediately get into that cultural and operational mainstream of the company. Slack's really helped Octopus be incredibly agile and efficient. I mean, we operate with between 50% and 75% fewer team members than our rivals for the same scale. And so we're a really, really efficient business. And agility is everything. We're trying to drive the global clean energy revolution. And to do that, we've got to keep on innovating at light speed. And we've got to bring customers with us. And I just wanted to use one example because my favorite channel in the whole of our Slack is one called Comms. And the Comms channel is where the people who are talking to customers are hundreds of frontline customer operations people are able to drop any observation that they've experienced into Slack to enable the comms team, the marketing and other people to very quickly spot things that we could communicate better with customers, improve that communication, and then give the feedback back to the operations people that it's happened. And I think that, as one example, it's taken processes which in many companies take months and involve deep dive discovery process and loads of Post-it notes, and they turn them into something that we can just do in real time. Now, to me, that's a great example of a company that is utilizing, the power, in this case, of Slack to be hyper agile. And we do that across the business. During the pandemic, many companies kind of had to pivot. I think we were fortunate in that we were already a very digital company with a lot of kind of cloud-based working. So the shift to moving from home for us was really the case just to saying to the team, remember to take your power supplies home for your laptops and we'll see you when this is over. But I think the really deep things that have changed were not the operational ones like that. It's been, how do we keep a company together? How do we keep team members connected and motivated? How do we help them through the difficulty and the loneliness and isolation, whilst at the same time continuing to drive, our hyper-scaling mission? And I think Slack has been absolutely pivotal there. What it's done is enabled team members across the world to continue to share ideas, thoughts, and approaches to delivering our mission in the Octopus way. And for me as a CEO and for our team as leaders, everything from the very large general channels on Slack to the ability that any member of the team can add @Greg to a message and loop me into a conversation has really helped us kind of maintain the very flat, very informal approach that has been core to our success. Amazingly, I think in the last year, by the way, our 1,400 people have sent 28 million Slack messages. And I think that kind of tells you the extent to which we've got this hyper connected community now across many countries, time zones, functions, and operations. The most important bit about Slack is the custom emojis. The custom emojis are what have turned our company's Slack into our very special place. We've got hundreds, thousands of them. They crop up, whether it be an animated picture of me or a dog that is celebrating its meal or whatever it be. The team have created dancing octopuses. We've got octopuses playing trumpets. And when people post them on Slack, the custom emojis kind of carry the genuine emotions of joy and sadness, of interest, of excitement that I think other ways of communicating digitally just don't do.
I want to be an NHL hockey player.
Be a ballerina and a singer.
A construction worker.
A police officer because I like fighting bad guys. I want to be a police officer when I'm a big adult, like 30 or 25. Help. Archaeologists. Help other people get food in other countries. I hope you like this video.
FreeNow decided to go 100% remote for several reasons. First of all, I think very quickly we learned it's actually working. And I'm saying this in a very humble and self-reflective way. I as a manager, I as a leader, I wasn't believing in 100% remote. Obviously the pandemic forced us to trial it and it worked. So I was proven wrong. Therefore, we are now in a place where we can actually go 100% remote. Now, some of our colleagues are coming from all over the world. I said 76 nations and nationalities are working at FreeNow. And they have a very, very strong urge to go back to their family and friends and look after their parents in this pandemic. So one way of us enabling this and keeping these colleagues would be to allow remote work. Otherwise, they couldn't go. And then thirdly, as a brand, we want to create our employer brand and we want to attract amazing future talent. And this is also going to be possible in the future by people not having to relocate into the north of Germany or into Barcelona, but actually working from home, keeping their sense of belonging not maybe within the business, but with their friends and family, but working for our amazing business just remotely. So we use Slack in different ways, and I could give probably 1,000 tips on how to use Slack during remote work. I think one thing that we really did consciously is we restructured our Slack channels because we needed to align and there was no communication across a desk and you couldn't just shout across the office for alignment. So we created Slack channels by territory, by geography, and we created Slack channels by content, like by topic, so that the communication was going a lot easier than that. Secondly, I think we started a lot more asynchronous work and Slack is helping on that as well. So does the G Suite and other sharing documents, but Slack is specifically good if you start having asynchronous discussion and you kind of chat away and you come to a conclusion, so decision-making processes. And we use Slack, now that everybody was working 100% digitally anyway, to do some automation. So using more Slack bots, integration with Jira, and these kind of things. So asynchronous work at FreeNow, maybe I just try and split it into two buckets. There's one thing where you need to have a discussion. It's more like a chat and you come to a conclusion, you can decide, or you just keep each other updated. Now we use tools like Slack to do that a lot. The benefit of asynchronous work is I, for example, in times of lockdown, have to look after my kids in the afternoon. So I will be able to still participate in that discussion because I can do it at my own time. I can do it in the evening. And that's the big, big benefit of this way of asynchronous work. Now, if we have bigger presentations or analysis or projects to run, then we work in, maybe you could call it the Amazon style. We build memos, we write proper documentation, and then we cascade that as a pre-read. Everybody can read it at their own time, and then we only meet digitally to discuss questions and then come to a conclusion in that meeting. So really, you can probably say by being more asynchronous, we've become a little bit more efficient and faster.
I love hearing directly from our customers about how Slack is changing the way they work. Now let's get to the final segment of our conversation between Stewart and Greg.
Did you make any organizational changes in order to ensure agility or to build resilience? Anything you could share maybe with other organizations?
I think there wasn't, at my level, there wasn't like a top-down decision and then, like different divisions of the company reorganized. There was a lot of bottoms-up, team-level experimentation and kind of adoption of new approaches. And again, that can be because you're not in the office at the same time as people. You need some means of supplementing that kind of the ambient information that people need in order to really have a shared idea of what's happening. And that in the military, they sometimes call it situational awareness. Having that is really necessary, and so people would find other ways. And it also forced a lot of experimentation and ultimately innovation on the product side of Slack as well, because I think there's two areas which we thought were especially interesting and valuable. And one was trying to recreate some of the serendipity and spontaneity of in-person conversations through a feature called Huddles. I think that's what we're going to call it publicly. It's testing with a bunch of customers right now. But unlike a call which starts and stops, and I call you and then your phone rings and you have to answer it right then, it's an always-on audio channel. And Slack already has the advantage of people have created all these channels, and they obviously are intended to mirror the priorities and structure of the organization itself. You can have a channel for every customer, every project, every business unit, office location. And you can just enter the huddle by yourself and have your speakers on and be working away. And if someone else joins and they say something, you'll just hear them, like you would overhear someone at your desk. And it exists, again, whether you leave or enter. So it's not intended for, huge groups of, 1,000 people or something like that. It's really intended for the people that you work with most closely, 5 people, 8 people, really at the team level. But teams that are working closely with each other all day, having this ability to have the conversation right now, turns out to be super valuable, because often the alternative is, let's find a time when we can all meet, and that can't happen till next Thursday, and it's a half-hour slot. So rather than being a 2-minute conversation right now, and the work is unlocked and you can keep going this afternoon, it becomes, okay, now we're going to put this thing on hold and defer the decisions until we can all get together. And because we scheduled half an hour, we're going to use the whole half hour. The other one is doesn't have any kind of public name. We talked about stories because one of the instruments is like short videos like Instagram stories or Snapchat stories. But the idea is to create a container for an asynchronous meeting. So this is not the marketing version of it, but a meeting object, and you can attach the agenda, you can attach like the presentation or planning materials, supplemental like references, technical documentation or proposals, and rather than say, okay, it's 11:30 now on Tuesday, and so everyone stop what you're doing, regardless of how in the moment, how in flow you are, and we're going to have this meeting right now. You have the opportunity to spread it out over, let's say, 17 hours. And there's many advantages to that, but the biggest one is it gives people some flexibility. In any process that today must be synchronous, in other words, people have to do it at the same time, that you can make asynchronous, even if it doesn't reduce the total number of hours worked, is still enormously valuable to people. Because some people like to work early in the morning, some people would rather work in the evening, some people want to be able to get some exercise in the middle of the afternoon. And if you're like in lockstep, from 9 till 5 with every half hour being a new video call that you're doing, there's a little bit of tyranny. Might sound overblown, but I think it is a hangover of the Industrial Revolution when we made the transition from people being paid from what they produced. So if you're a baker, it's like how many loaves of bread can you bake and sell, to their time. And when you start paying people for their time, just for logistical reasons, you have to have them all start and stop at the same time. And you have to have a whistle that blows on the factory floor, and everyone from 10:10 to 10:20 can go have their tea or something like that. And that's really, it takes away a lot of autonomy and I think probably ultimately a lot of people's ability to contribute. And the last thing I would say is, of course, it helps people with multiple time zones. It also helps people who like to take a little bit more time to formulate their thoughts before giving feedback. So rather than, we have 30 minutes in this meeting, 20 minutes of is me giving you a presentation, and now you have 10 minutes to both think through, to kind of process it, synthesize your feedback, and communicate it. And if you don't do it then, you've lost your chance now. And I think that's definitely something we should overcome.
So on the product front, there was a major milestone with Slack Connect. What's the uptake been like?
It's been pretty incredible. So I'm not sure what the absolute latest numbers are, but I think 74,000 different organizations that are using it. That's up more than 100% over the year. But the number of connections between them, because it's not always just one company to one other company, it can be one company to many other. The rate of those, what we call connected endpoints, was 245% year on year. So really exceptional growth. And what people are finding is it's so much easier to support your customers using a shared channel, that the same amount of effort creates a much better customer experience. And if you have happy customers, that's good for you. So what we find is people on the sell side, people who sell software, people who sell other services, a lot of the world's biggest consulting organizations, a lot of the world's biggest purchasers as well are in on it, because they want to receive that level of responsiveness and support. It's actually been entirely driven by customers coming up with new use cases. And it's really exciting, because this was part of the vision of Slack from the very beginning. And it took us years and years to get to this point, but now that it's happening, it's kind of everything that we dreamed of.
Stuart, we're over time. It's always so fascinating to hear your thoughts. And it's clearly such an important topic. It's going to be a fascinating few months as all of us figure out what the future of work looks like. Stewart, thank you so much for joining us, and stay safe.
Yeah, thank you, Greg.
Thank you, Stewart and Greg, for such an insightful conversation. And that brings us to the end of our opening keynote. A huge thank you to our keynote speakers, our spotlight customers, and especially those adorable employees of the future. Next up for you are the breakout sessions. You can hear from our European customers and product experts on how they are on the path to reinventing work. You might also want to attend a Slack demo session and be part of discussions taking place in our community workspace. There's a great menu of options available for you to enjoy live and on demand. Finally, don't forget to tune in to the closing keynote, featuring vocal artist Box of Beats and 4-time Olympic gold medalist Venus Williams. Thank you and enjoy Frontiers Europe 2021.
Hold up. Hold up.